You're listening to international investment advisor Doug Goldstein on the Goldstein on Gelt show, the financial show where we'll talk about how you can make the most of your money. With all the confusing financial chatter bombarding you each and every day, Goldstein on Gelt will give you the practical information you want and need about living a financially stable life. Here's your host, money maven Doug Goldstein.
Okay, we are back. I'm very happy to have on the Goldstein on Gelt show Jay Shultz, who you might have heard of as the mayor of Tel Aviv, even though he's not the official mayor. He made Aliyah about 7 years ago. He's the president of the Am Yisrael organization. Jay, a real pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having me, Doug.
So one of the cool things that you are known to have done is having set up these professional community groups for English speakers. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, certainly. Listen, I did move to Israel 7 years ago from New York. And for me, it used to be that most young Olim would go to Yerushalayim. But then I also knew that the majority of young internationals that made Aliyah to Jerusalem within 5 years returned. And the numbers weren't good, and I certainly came here knowing I wanted it to be a one-way trip. So I focused on Tel Aviv for two main reasons. One, Tel Aviv is the best propaganda cell I had to try to convince as many other young Jews around the world to get out of Chutz La'aretz and come home.
All right.
And two, and much more importantly, had the best chance to be sustainable. Tel Aviv is where most of the jobs are. And as wonderful, as much as I love Yerushalayim, much more important than being in Yerushalayim the rest of your life is staying in Israel the rest of your life. And sustaining yourself is the first key to all of that. And so I focused on Tel Aviv. But when I came to Tel Aviv, there was no vibrant international community. There was no young, ole, vibrant society like Yerushalayim had and has had for some years now. So I focused on building what I knew was needed, what was so normal for me coming from New York City and the Jewish communities we had there, is building multiple communal structures, community platforms, organizations designed specifically to give a cushion to young people who move here, who want to stay here the rest of their lives, and then, on the other hand, to attract as many as possible to move here as soon as possible.
So what would be examples of some of these organizations?
Sure. So the first organization I started was called the Tel Aviv International Salon. It's simply a speakers forum. Mm-hmm. Twice a month, we really bring the leaders in Israel, the main decision makers, and whether they be Knesset members or ambassadors or ministers, professors, leaders in business and media, entertainment, speaking in English to hundreds of young people. But, it's not just young people, young internationals in Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv also has a significant percentage of well-educated, internationally focused Israelis that maybe spent time abroad, worked abroad, love doing things in English, very proficient in English. And Tel Aviv is also where most of the embassies are. So we get tons. If you can imagine, if you're working for the Japanese embassy, just living in Tel Aviv for 4 years, stationed abroad, what do you do every night personally? And as also foreign journalists. And so we've become the largest English speakers forum in all of Israel. For instance, in this past election cycle, we hosted the largest events in English that guys like Naftali Bennett did, Yair Lapid, Likud and Avodah. It's really become quite a force.
Mm-hmm. You keep referring to the groups as internationals, but it sounds like is there a reason you're using that term instead of either Anglos or American Olim?
Yeah, Anglos. I always hated the term. Anglos was the common term used to refer to us, me being American, mm-hmm. and I never liked it. As an American, I never heard the word Anglo. Anglo was always English, a British thing, right?
Right.
So personally, I never connected to it. I hated people referring to me as an Anglo. Not to mention, it also excludes everyone who is from Argentina and France and Russia and Italy and Denmark, Sweden, guys, Jews living here in Israel that have proficient English, but they're certainly not Anglo.
I got you.
Not in that form. And I really wanted to build an international community because even though the majority of internationals, for instance, in Tel Aviv happen to be young Olim, there's no reason not to include amazing foreign journalists and embassy staff that are not Jewish and not Anglo, but certainly proficient English and want to be part of a substantive lifestyle.
Okay, so you mentioned this one group you set up, the Salon. What are some others?
Right, and then, White City Shabbat. White City Shabbat brands the Jewish life of Tel Aviv. I think many people forget especially in the Jewish, more religious world, both in Israel and outside, that Tel Aviv is part of Eretz HaKodesh. Tel Aviv is a Jewish city. In fact, it was the first modern Jewish city. We have over 600 Beit Knessets. We have a vibrant Jewish life, Torah life, Shabbat community. And myself, coming from abroad and American diaspora Jewish communities, even if you're not very, very religious, you still like being part of a Jewish community. And so branding and marketing Tel Aviv as that was so important. Just as a Kedush Hashem to show the world, guys, don't forget when Shlomo HaMelech wanted to build the Beit HaMikdash, the first thing he does, he cuts down trees in Chutz La'aretz, and the first time the building blocks of the Beit HaMikdash come to Eretz Yisrael was through Tel Aviv Yafo. Remember, Yafo was always the port, the Namal for Yerushalayim. And then these pieces came to Jerusalem. Same with the second temple. And I can promise you, Doug, the building blocks of the third temple, physically, spiritually, the merit will come again through Tel Aviv because it happened twice before. So that's one part of the White City Shabbat. The other half is we produce for hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people in Tel Aviv Shabbat meals. Any Friday night, any Shabbat afternoon, anyone who's looking for a meal, we set you up, and we produce our own meals. For instance, not that long ago, we had 150 people. Rav Lau came to speak. Golan Heights Winery came to the wine tasting at the meal. It's very young and cool and hip. We take over a bunch of these old, beautiful Beit Knessets that we bring life back to. And it really makes for a very happy, substantive life for people of all levels of the Jewish rainbow, observant rainbow.
That's a great way to describe it. We are talking with Jay Shultz, who is sometimes called the mayor of Tel Aviv, even though he's not really. Jay, tell me something. Do you have political ambitions with all of the leadership that you've demonstrated?
Yeah, no, I love politics. It's fascinating. I love talking about it, thinking about it, playing with it. And we live in a democratic society. That's how things get done. I personally never want to run for Knesset, never want to run for municipal elections. I want to be involved. And I've really, through a lot of what I've been doing, is being an honest broker for all the mainstream Zionist parties, making sure that specifically young Olim have not only access but influence across the board. Although I have my personal views in politics, to me it's much more important that more good people get involved everywhere, and then more good will happen across the board, specifically for the Ole voice in Israel.
So you mentioned before that a lot of times people come to Israel, they stay for a couple of years, and then they don't really make it and they go back. What would you suggest to people to do so that they, in fact, are successful when they come?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with perspective. I mean, Doug, it's clear this is the easiest time in Jewish history to be a Jew living in the land of Israel. It wasn't easier 10 years ago, and it wasn't easier 50 years ago, 500 or 3,000. And I think that perspective is everything. You know, this country started 3 days ago. Remember that. 65 years after America started, we were approaching civil war. For 65 years, Israel's doing pretty amazing. And you need to understand that you're coming to a place that is still being built. You still have to be a pioneer. You have to come here knowing, in a positive sense, not as it's a responsibility to build this country, but what a noble honor. The same way Jabotinsky thought of it, and Begin thought of it, and Ben Gurion thought of it. And you can know that between God, Moshe Rabbeinu, Ben Gurion, and you can help decide the next 1,000 years of Jewish history with a little bit of energy and effort. And I think when you're coming here knowing I'm not going to have the same car as in America, and I'm not going to have the same green grass and backyard, but I'm going to have a much more substantive life that gives to my family that I know will be here for the next 1,000 years, there's value there.
Jay, I agree with everything you just said. I support all of the whole concept of the big picture of Jews returning to Israel. But Tachlis, what are we talking about there? A guy gets off the plane. What does he do the next day to support his family?
Tachlis is crucial, obviously, and supporting your family is far and away the most important. And I would say, you know, the happiest people I know, the most successful Olim I know, are not just socially, but in a business real sense, entrepreneurial. And I love Israelis. They're amazing. They're amazing people, the nicest, kindest, warmest people on the planet. But the happiest Olim I know are the ones that don't work for Israelis or have Israeli clients. They're entrepreneurial in a real international sense. Thank God. It's a real blessing. The world is a lot smaller than it used to be. And God has given us this amazing miracle of internet and faxes and emails and phones, and you can really be sitting anywhere and really be making incredible parnasa internationally through your own entrepreneurial efforts. So first and foremost, if you can be an entrepreneur, do that. Secondly, because of the high-tech boom of Israel, of the thousands and thousands of high-tech companies we have, they're not making money off the Israeli economy. And Olim have a unique value to these companies that an Israeli counterpart peer couldn't possibly. We're always going to be better selling, marketing, biz dev to the States, to Europe, to really anything outside of Israel. We are going to be far more valuable, have more international connections, business savvy, friend networks globally that bring this kind of treasure to the Israeli high-tech industry.
All right, so let's just sum up a little bit. We're just about out of time. The concept that you're describing would require that someone who comes to Israel is going to need some sort of network in order to get the job and to be able to do these things. What would you suggest to someone to develop that?
I guess it is think about the industry that interests you before you come here, and most people don't just come on a whim. It's thought out over years. Spend time, whether it's New York, London, Paris, work on that industry, go to local conferences, make the connections, and just that Rolodex that you're bringing with you is what's going to help get you the job.
All right, that sounds like brilliant advice. We've been talking to Jay Shultz, who has set up a number of organizations in Israel, specifically in the Tel Aviv area, to help the international community. Jay, in the last few seconds, just tell me, how can people keep track of you and what you're doing?
Yeah, well, you can find me on Facebook at TLV Internationals. You can also get my organizations at tlvsalon.com, whitecityshabbat.com. I also have adoptasafta.com, where Olim adopt a grandmother or grandfather from the Holocaust, a lonely Holocaust survivor. We'll talk about that another time, Doug, but there's a lot going on, and come to Tel Aviv, guys. It's amazing.
All right, what I'll do is I'll take those links. We'll be sure to put them up on the show notes at goldsteinongelt.com so people can follow you.
Thanks.
Jay, thanks very much for your time.
Thanks for having me, Doug. Have a great day.
You've been listening to the Goldstein on Gelt Show with money maven Doug Goldstein. Doug's weekly radio show is heard around the world, but if you miss it, you can download the podcast at www.goldsteinongelt.com. The Goldstein on Gelt Show gives you up-to-date financial ideas so you can get on the path to financial freedom. If you'd like your questions answered on the air or off, send Doug an email to doug@profile-financial.com. It's your money for your future, so join Doug every week to build your wealth on the Goldstein on Gelt Show.